What is happiness? By its very nature, it can often mean that there will be suffering later on. There is no worldly happiness that lasts for a very long time. Worldly happiness includes an element of change, of built-in suffering. For that reason, the first noble truth of the awareness of suffering refers not just to immediate suffering, but also to the subtle elements of suffering. The first noble truth is the full understanding of suffering. The first noble truth includes awareness of all the ramifications of suffering, because it encompasses the very nature and essence of suffering. This includes knowledge of the subtle and the obvious aspects of suffering. The obvious aspect of suffering is immediate pain or difficulty in the moment. Subtle suffering is more difficult to understand because it begins with happiness. But by its very nature, this happiness must change because it can't go on forever. Because it must change into suffering, subtle suffering is the impermanence of pleasure. There is no worldly happiness that lasts for a very long time. Worldly happiness includes an element of change, of built-in suffering. For that reason, the first noble truth of the awareness of suffering refers not just to immediate suffering, but also to the subtle elements of suffering. If one is suffering but is not aware of it, one will never have the motivation to eliminate this suffering and will continue to suffer. When one is aware of suffering, one is able to overcome it. Once one has a very clear picture of the nature of suffering, one can really begin to avoid such suffering. Suffering doesn't go on forever because the Buddha entered the world, gave teachings, and demonstrated clearly what suffering is. He also taught the means by which suffering can be ended and described the state beyond suffering, which is liberation. One can gradually eliminate suffering and move towards eventual liberation. Once one knows what suffering is, one must eliminate that suffering. It is not a question of eliminating the suffering itself, but of eliminating the causes of suffering. Once one removes the causes of suffering, then automatically the effect, which is suffering, is no longer present. The truth of universal origination means that which is the cause or origin of absolutely everything. The truth of universal origination indicates that the root cause of suffering is karma and the kleshas. Karma means activity and klesha means mental defilement or mental poison. When one realizes that the experience of suffering is a product of what one has done, that is, a result of one's karma, eliminating suffering becomes possible. Karma produces suffering and is driven by the defilements. The term defilement refers mainly to one's negative motivation and negative thoughts, which produce negative actions. There are three kinds of actions: mental, verbal, and physical. These are subdivided into virtuous and unvirtuous actions. If one abandons these three types of unvirtuous actions, then one's actions become automatically virtuous. Through unvirtuous physical actions, one will experience problems and unhappiness. Through unvirtuous speech such as lying, one experiences unhappiness and sorrow. Through unvirtuous states of mind, one also experiences unhappiness. Any unvirtuous activity produces unpleasantness or unhappiness. The second aspect of karma relates to conditioning. By being unvirtuous with one's body, speech, or mind, one habituates oneself to a certain style of behavior. These habits condition our state of mind so we become more inclined toward those actions. Even though we may recognize that unvirtuous karma gives rise to suffering and virtuous karma gives rise to happiness, it is hard for us to give up unvirtuous actions and practice virtuous actions because the defilements exercise a powerful influence on us. We need to give up the defilements because they are the root of unvirtuous actions. The Buddha has given us a very skillful way to eliminate the very root of all the defilements through the examination of the belief in the existence of ego or self. We have to search for this self that we believe in, and through this search we can discover that the self does not exist. Then we will be able gradually to eliminate the belief in a self. When this is done, the defilements are also eliminated because with an elimination of the belief in self, unvirtuous karma is also eliminated. To summarize, once one recognizes what suffering really is, then one begins by removing its causes. One stops doing unvirtuous actions that create suffering. To stop these unvirtuous activities, one digs out their root, which are the defilements. To eradicate the defilements, one needs to remove their heart, which is the belief in a self. The third noble truth is the cessation of suffering, through which it is explained that the causes of karma and the defilements can be removed. We have control over suffering because karma and the defilements take place within us. We create them, we experience them. The very essence and nature of cessation is peace. The peace one obtains from the cessation of everything unhealthy is the deepest happiness, bliss, and well-being. Its very nature is lasting, in contrast to worldly happiness, which is exciting for a time but then changes. There are four main qualities of this truth of cessation. First, it is the cessation of suffering. Second, it is peace. Third, it is the deepest liberation and wisdom. Fourth, it is a very definitive release. The truth of the path is called the truth of the path because a path leads one to the ultimate goal. One does this step by step, stage by stage, progressively completing one's journey. The main stages are called the 5 paths: the stage of accumulation, the stage of junction, the stage of insight, the stage of cultivation, and the final stage of no more practice. The first path is called the path of accumulation because one tries to gather all the positive factors needed to progress. One gathers the positive elements into one's being while at the same time working to remove all the unwanted elements from one's life. Eventually, because of the complete gathering of favorable conditions, we will reach the path of insight. This is the stage during which insight into the way things actually are is developed, which is beyond the veil of delusion. Once there is no longer a belief in self, there are no longer any root defilements of attachment, aggression, or mental darkness associated with the idea of self. The fourth stage is called the path of cultivation. Through becoming more and more familiar with the truth of things, we can remove the very fine traces of defilements and subconscious conditioning that still exist. Through the cultivation of insight, we eventually reach the goal of the 5th path that is called the path of no more study. Through cultivation, we remove even the most subtle causes of suffering. Once this is completed, we have reached the highest state and there are no more new paths to go along.